fact, it appears that the U.S. government funded the creation of the virus that caused the global pandemic. We also know that President Barack Obama had banned that research, and that Anthony Fauci had created a workaround to get around that and move that research to the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
This USAID stuff, guys, is just getting more wild by the day. One thing you have to worry about with all this stuff is when you start to uncover this amount of corruption, and more every day, and people are saying, whoa, 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 stop looking. You have to worry about those people. Today I want to share you a couple of clips here of Michael Shellenberger, an actual journalist, talking about some of these findings. And this is wild. The second clip I'm going to play for you is him talking about the Wuhan virus that was funded by USAID at the direction of Dr. Fauci. After he was told not to do it, this guy found a loophole, a back door into getting this funded, which caused the pandemic. That shut down businesses, the economy, 2 years of some people's life that were locked indoors pretty much. You're never going to get that back. Nobody's going to apologize to you. Before that, we're going to watch a clip of Michael Shellenberger talking about USAID funding the impeachment efforts against Donald Trump, funding the Biden laptop misinformation campaign. The stuff is wild. But before I get to all that, I want to share with you a clip of some Democratic presidents talking about this exact thing that Doge is doing. This is the hypocrisy of the left.
This report tells us how to cut waste, cut red tape, streamline the bureaucracy, change procurement rules, change the personnel rules, and create a government that works better and costs less.
I've read it, and where it says the president should, the president will.
Among the 800 recommendations, eliminating 12% of the federal workforce, merging some government agencies like the FBI, the DEA, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, closing hundreds of government offices outside Washington.
From the day I took office, one of the commitments that I made to the American people was that we would do a better job here in Washington in rooting out wasteful spending. We thought that it was entirely appropriate for our governments and our agencies to try to root out waste, large and small, in a systematic way. It means cutting some programs that I think are worthy, but we may not be able to afford right now. A lot of the action is in Congress and legislative, but in the meantime, we don't need to wait for Congress in order to do something about wasteful spending that's out there. We haven't seen as much action out of Congress as we'd like, and that's why we launched on our own initiative the campaign to cut waste. And we're going to keep on finding every possible way that we can do that, even if Congress is not acting.
So, Mr. Shellenberger, Doge also discovered that the Biden administration spent millions of dollars on subscriptions to left-leaning media outlets like Politico. The Biden administration censored certain media and Americans online that didn't favor the administration's narrative, and now we see that their administration was essentially financing media outlets to favor them. How is this not a conflict of interest, and what do you think of this?
Yeah, I agree it's a huge conflict of interest, and it's really just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, what we uncovered in our reporting is that the USAID has basically been bankrolling an organization called the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, which has been in the process over the last decade and a half of really taking over so-called independent investigative journalism around the world, usually relying on strategic leaks by the intelligence community, but with an aim to really undermine the independence of investigative journalism. When we started investigating these guys, they threatened to sue us right away. They have a $9 million fund just to sue people. It's called Reporters Shield, but it's an offensive weapon that they use to basically shut down any inquiry into what they're doing. And we've even seen now, we've now traced that USAID money to investigations that were essential to the 2019 impeachment of President Donald Trump, and then also to the Russiagate hoax, particularly spreading misinformation and malinformation about Trump's alleged ties to the Russians. Of course, one of the greatest conspiracy theory of the recent era, which alleged that because President Trump banked with Deutsche Bank, and that there were Russians, oligarchs, who also banked with Deutsche Bank, that there had to be some sort of a conspiracy. So that's just the tip of the iceberg, sir. It's really a deep corruption of so-called mainstream independent media.
Based on your investigation, you also talk about how USAID transfers funds between projects, make it hard for anybody to sort of track the funds. Can you elaborate?
Well, sure. And so, part of what happened is that one of the media organizations in Germany, one of their big television stations, NDR, really turned the tables on OCCRP and began an investigation. USAID admitted on camera that they had routed money from the State Department's Law Enforcement Bureau through USAID just for optics reasons, admitting on camera that they did that because they knew that it would look bad for an investigative journalism organization to be supported by effectively the cops, by law enforcement. That's not good journalism practice. That violates basically every code of ethics by every journalism organization in the world. They also acknowledged that USAID has to agree to OCCRP's work plan and that they have to agree to their key staff. And this was all literally recorded on video, USAID officials saying this. Then afterwards, OCCRP denied it. They just said that that wasn't true. It just asserted that it was false. So, I mean, really what you're looking at with OCCRP and also Internews is that these are really vectors of disinformation. They spread disinformation and then demand censorship on the basis of it. That's what they did with the COVID lab leak, as the chairman was mentioning. First, they spread the disinformation that it was a conspiracy theory that it could have come from a lab, when of course their own scientists suspected that's what it was. And then they demanded censorship on the basis of it. Same thing happened with Hunter Biden, and we see that playbook, I think, underway here today, where when you actually when journalists start to expose these misdeeds, they just project and say, you're spreading a conspiracy theory, and of course that has been traditionally the basis for demanding censorship.
In 2022, the Biden administration donated $344 million to United Nations Relief and Work Agency for Palestinian refugees, and continued to donate hundreds of millions of dollars throughout 2023 and during the Israeli-Hamas war. We now know Hamas terrorists were stealing food and supplies intended for humanitarian purposes. So was the U.S. government funding a terrorist organization?
It sure looks like that, and I haven't investigated that particular case. But I think one of the big lessons from all of this, we may remember, those of us that are old enough to remember what we were learning after 9/11 is that was a process of blowback. We had been arming the Mujahideen, and we had been in alliance with the folks that actually then, their networks then ended up creating the 9/11 attacks. So I think what we're seeing here, starting to blow back on us, where we see the disinformation and censorship being weaponized against the American people, because we have a USAID complex that's been completely unaccountable. Obviously, the Inspector General wasn't doing his job right, and therefore I think merits this very serious audit. And I agree with the chairman. If there's good stuff that they have been doing, and I don't doubt that there has been, then it should make the case for it and be added in back later, rather than sort of that we all assume that everything's fine.
All right. Thank you, Chairman.
Senator Kim.
Guys, before we get to the next clip, and I'll give you my thoughts at the end of the video, if you don't mind smashing that thumbs up button for your boy, that really goes a long way to help me out. And also, if you're not yet subscribed, hopefully this could be the video that I earn your subscription. Let's get back to it.
By law, all federal spending is required to be publicly available on usaspending.gov. We've known for a while that Dr. Fauci used NIH funding to finance bat coronavirus research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, but it took the watchdog White Coat Waste Project to expose evidence that USAID was funding it too. In fact, the bulk of the money came from USAID. Yet no grants to the Chinese lab appeared on usaspending.gov. It was hidden from the public through layers of unreported subgrants and subawards. Thankfully, my push to defund EcoHealth Alliance was successful, and the group is now barred from receiving U.S. government grants. But this is why my TRACS Act must become law to prevent money being sent to China, the Taliban, or any other foreign adversary. Every grant recipient must be disclosed to ensure accountability, and we shouldn't stop there. My bipartisan Stop Secret Spending Act, introduced with Ranking Member Peters, would add additional transparency to federal spending. So, Mr. Shellenberger, I'll start with you, please. Why is USAID so secretive about how it spends billions of taxpayer dollars? Is it to avoid the public outrage over the waste, or is there something more nefarious there?
Well, thank you, Senator. And first of all, thank you for your leadership in bringing transparency and accountability to aid and the funding there. Obviously, this example you just gave of the Wuhan Institute of Virology is incredible. I mean, the fact it appears that the U.S. government funded the creation of the virus that caused the global pandemic. We also know that President Barack Obama had banned that research, and that Anthony Fauci had created a workaround to get around that and move that research to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Had there been some transparency about it, I think some questions would have been raised. One of the claims, of course, that was made right after Senator Cotton raised the idea that maybe it did leak from a lab. Washington Post claimed it was a debunked conspiracy theory. Anybody who had just Googled virus lab leak would have discovered that there had been years and years, maybe decades, of news stories about viruses leaking from labs. It's a very common thing, and of course, it was one of the main reasons that we wanted to end that risky gain-of-function research, because we knew it was the high risk of something leaking from a lab. So I think I applaud your work. We need much more transparency with it. As I mentioned before, I do think that some part of that motivation may have been to hide regime change operations that were run by USAID in concert with the State Department. If you're going to be doing regime change operations, those belong in the State Department and with the CIA, not in a charitable organization, because if you genuinely want people to trust in vaccines or other public health measures, it's a terrible thing for them to believe that maybe it's part of some counterterrorism operation or some manipulation by the U.S. government that has some political motivation or some regime change motivation. If it's truly, truly charitable support for things like, for good causes, then there has to be a firewall between that and what the CIA and the State Department are doing.
Yeah, transparency, transparency, transparency. It is so important. I'll continue with you, and then Mr. Ruger, you can add your thoughts as well. But absent a forensic audit by the Trump administration, do you think we would have ever known the full depth of USAID's spending or misspending in this case?
No, I mean, this is, obviously the administration is pursuing a model that Silicon Valley has used for a long time, which is that you do need to make changes to actually see what's going on. And so, I think it's an incredible moment of reform. I wish it were bipartisan. The last time of serious reform in the United States was, of course, in the mid-1970s. We had the Church Committee hearings exactly 50 years ago this year that were bipartisan, that revealed much of the abuses of power by the CIA, by the FBI. It led to a set of reforms, including greater whistleblower protections. I do hope that Democrats will join you, Senator, in pushing for those reforms, because it's obviously in the interest of all of us, all Americans. And, in most of the past, the FBI had been weaponized against leftists in the United States. It's only recently we see the deep state mostly targeting right-wing populists. But that this sort of commitment, it's an all-American commitment to not letting the state be abused for political reasons. And I think next time, you never know, it could be weaponized against the left again. And so I hope that Democrats will join you in making this renewed push. And I applaud the Republicans for taking up the mantle of pushing for greater disclosure, greater transparency, greater accountability. And I just think some overall clarity about what does the United States want its interaction with the world to be? Is this still the same? Are we still in the period after World War II to today, or do we need to kind of rebalance our relationship? I mean, I think the public voted for a rebalancing towards a more America First agenda. I also don't think Americans want to completely withdraw from the world. But again, I do think that some basic hygiene is in order in terms of separating out what is genuinely charitable or development activities from what is regime change, censorship, disinformation, information control activities.
Right.
The country is nearly $37 trillion in debt. So that means that each U.S. citizen taxpayer, if you were to do it by person, would owe over $320,000 apiece. That means when the EPIC, which is the Economic Policy Innovation Center, says that we have $18 trillion left. That's $18 trillion left to take out. And we're spending $2 trillion in debt every year. We are literally at a point in America which the dollar will be worth nothing if we keep going this way. Thank God for Donald Trump and Elon Musk discovering all this stuff. What all this means is that looking at $18 trillion, if we keep going the way we are, well, that's Social Security going bankrupt in, 8 years? That's Medicare going bankrupt in about 10 years. 15 years from now, at this rate, the dollar would have been worth nothing. It would have been devalued into shit. That means your pension, your bank money, all your savings would be pretty much worthless at the rate that we were going. Elon Musk, Donald Trump, they're trying to save that. They're trying to save your bank account, American taxpayers' bank account, so that the country is in a better place for the next generation, which is what you want. You want your children to be better off than you are. It's not the case right now. But these corrupt Democrats, instead of spending the time talking about all this crazy waste that we're doing, and again, I say, you have to worry about the people that when you find all this waste and fraud that say, hey, stop looking, you got to worry about those people. What they're doing is they're attacking the messenger. They're attacking Elon Musk. Oh, he's rich. He must be evil. But they don't talk about any of the findings that he's doing with his team as Doge. Now, imagine you're a business or a state, an entity, whatever, and Elon Musk and this team of super geniuses at Doge come in and say, hey, for free, for zero money, we're going to go in, and this is a man who loves the country, right? You can tell this is a man who loves America. We're going to go in there and we're going to provide you financial services to find all the waste in your business, to see where you're losing money, to make your business more efficient. No businessman on earth would say no to that. And the country, at the end of the day, is a business. But yet the people on the left are saying no. This is why you got to watch out for people like that. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, smash that thumbs up button for your boy. Consider subscribing to the channel. Help it grow. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out, everybody.